Let's just get this over with.
This is a podcast.
Welcome to Our Weird World. I am your host, John Henson. Today, we are wrapping up Season 5, completing 5 years of this show, which was started as really a COVID project, coming up on the anniversary of the lockdown in 2020, 5 years ago. It seems so much longer now. It's amazing how in 2020, we're like, wow, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. It can't possibly get any worse than this. And it has. It actually has. I think we all look at the world now, pre-COVID and post-COVID, where it's like COVID just wasn't like a singular thing. It was just like a fresh reset into just year after year after year of calamity and absurdity. You know, like I think someone well into the future actually invented a time machine, came back in time, and they killed a butterfly or something and just wrecked the entire timeline in 2020. I'm pretty sure that's it. No, it does on a very small level bother me that the seasons for the podcast change in mid-October. I've mentioned this before. I actually had planned on starting this podcast in January of 2020, but then I weirdly procrastinated on it. I did. I got overwhelmed with everything that I needed to do to start the show that I just didn't do it. And then lockdown happened and I started everything up in a matter of like a couple of days. I think honestly, like we went into lockdown on a Friday, and like by I think in a week I had already released the first episode. Like just that quick of a turnaround. I got the sound beds made, I got the hosting set up, I got kind of my format figured out, all of it in a week. You know, and like I had been working on it here and there. I had concepts of a podcast in my mind, but I didn't, kind of had the name figured out, knew what I was going to do, kind of some of the episodes that I was going to do, but like, I just didn't do it. And then COVID happened. I'm like, well, I'm going to need something to do since I can't go out in public because I love doing that so much anyway. I wasn't going to be going to work every day. So what could I do? Oh, I could sit at home and yell into my empty house. Because the nice thing about it, I say nice, like my wife, she still had to go out and work. She was a nanny, so she was still leaving every day and going out into the big scary world where the pandemic was. And I was just at home all day, every day, just living my best life. Oh, God. If I could go back, I know COVID was a nightmare for a bunch of people, but that was the best 3 months of my life. I was able to just be home every day. I was still doing a job. And it was just like, and look, it's not like the job was easy. Like there was a lot of drama and there was a lot of tough stuff going on. I'm in a B2B industry and a lot of B's were not being no more, and they were panicking. And so there's a lot of some questionable times there, but I couldn't have been happier. No stress. And since I have had to go back to the office for the last 4.5 years, oh, God. I've had so much gray added to my beard. Like, I have more gray in my beard than any man in his 30s should. And I'm pretty sure it's just from post-COVID stress about the world and life and everything that I've got going on with it. And I don't even have that stressful of a life. I just don't respond to stress that well, clearly. So, anyway, we're wrapping up season 5 today. And listen, I know my audience. I know that the vast majority of you are white. And I also know that you had nothing to do with this. But our grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents did. And so, it's a little unfortunate at times being white, being so privileged, being at the top. Let's not get cocky about it. Let's acknowledge that maybe there were some nefarious ways of us getting to the top, maybe stepped on and over less privileged people to get there. All right. That's what today's episode's all about. All right. Now, here's the thing. All right. You should be proud of me. I could not, in good conscience, do this episode during Black History Month. All right. That would have been a little inappropriate, especially as we go through these stories today. But, because look, it's not like I've never not talked about black people during Black History Month. I did an episode a couple years ago where I talked about some less than savory black characters in history during Black History Month. I thought it was a nice little twist so that people could stop hearing about George Washington Carver and Martin Luther King Jr. for once and learn about maybe some black people who weren't great. And so I did that. But, this episode could be taken out of context if I did it during Black History Month. And so instead, to end season 5, I would like to make you, my wonderful, supportive listening audience, feel very guilty for being white. 4 stories today of some black people who just got run over for being black, figuratively and literally, as you will see. Looking at the stories of Claude Neal, Powell Green, the Walker family, and our first story, it'll be a short one, of Arthur Jordan.
Story time. Story time. Story time? Story time.
Arthur Jordan was a black man in Warrenton, Virginia. It's a small town, kind of north central Virginia. He had been accused of bigamy in 1880, which was made very much worse by the fact that his second wife that he took illegally was white. And that was made even worse by the fact that it was his white boss's daughter. So when people found out about this, that some black man taking all the white women, we're just going to start with his boss's daughter, but then he's just going to take our wives too? We're going to let him get away with it? And so a small, fiercely dedicated group of racists hunted for Arthur Jordan, eventually finding him in Williamsport, Maryland, 80 miles away. The group brought him back to the town jail in Warrenton, where on the morning of January 19th, 1880, a mob of as many as 75 white men dressed in white hoods, which is never a good sign. They arrived at the jail, dragged him to a nearby cemetery, and hanged him from a small locust tree. So, white people already off with a bang. Like, it's not necessary. It's not like if it was a white dude who took another white lady as his wife, people would be a little upset by that. And they would probably go through the court system. All right. But they wouldn't go and drag him out of jail and hang him. All right. They wouldn't even bat an eye if he had taken a black woman as his second wife. They'd have been like, what are you doing, brother? No, we get it. Yeah. No, but no, just because the dude was black, people were like, no, black people can't do that. Can't do anything. We got to kill him. So way to go, whiteys. Like Virginia, here's the thing. Virginia likes to paint itself like it's this, quasi quaint European, very prim and proper, at least in my experience, kind of place. No, it's racist as hell, bro. Like, it's kind of trashy too. All right. Don't let it fool you. Don't let the rolling countrysides and narrow back roads with stone lined, walls or whatever. God, so pretty out there, but also trashy, kind of racist too. So anyway, Moving on to 1908, when farmers and fishermen in western Kentucky and Tennessee began organizing as night rider gangs in opposition to the West Tennessee Land Company, which was this group of private investors who were planning to drain most of Reelfoot Lake out in kind of that, I think it's kind of in the land between the lakes area where there's like this weird little strip of Kentucky. I think it's Kentucky that's like cut off from the rest of the state by two different lakes, and it just borders Tennessee, which is weird. But the locals in the area had relied on Reelfoot Lake for fishing and farming the fertile soil nearby, and didn't really like the thought of having the land privatized, especially for something that was going to be bringing in a lot of black workers. Because here's the thing, all right? Not sure if you realize this, but just because the slaves were emancipated after the Civil War didn't mean that they just like didn't stop working the same jobs that they did when they were slaves. They were just basically paid for it and allowed to like have their own home. You know, they were still treated like crap, and they still picked cotton and tobacco and all that other stuff. So like, did a lot change? No, fundamentally it did. But like everything, like, I don't think that the freeing of the slaves changed everything in the way that maybe a lot of Northerners were hoping it would change. Like, as evidenced by the fact that it still took almost another 100 years for the civil rights movement and all that stuff to like finally get things more on an even playing field for everybody. Well, this happens early 1900s. Farmers, Western Kentucky and Tennessee, they find out that this private company is coming to not only drain their water, drain their lake, but then they're going to put cotton crops out there, and then they're going to be bringing a bunch of black people in to go plant the cotton. And so over the course of several months, these farmers and fishermen were these, turning themselves into these night riders, where they were going out, at night, obviously, and they were hanging and beating and hanging locals and threatening to lynch other black people in the area. So look, to their credit, they're not just racist against black people. They're just angry at other people living in the area who were in support of this company coming in and allowing this to happen. Well, one of the black families in the area that the night riders were trying to intimidate was the Walker family. They had become landowners after the emancipation. They had owned a 22-acre farm near Hickman, Kentucky, where David Walker and his wife were raising their family. And so one day, after David had an altercation with a white man because Walker had allegedly sworn at a white woman, can't do that. So everybody finds out about this. And so the next day, 50 of these night riders showed up at Walker's house and threatened him for his violation of Jim Crow customs. Walker refused to come out of the house, and so the mob poured coal oil onto the house and actually set it on fire. And then when Walker came outside to plead for his family's safety, the entire mob just opened fire and gunned him down. Walker's wife then walked out of the house holding their baby in her arms, begging the night riders for mercy. Instead, one night rider shot the baby, another one shot the mother. Woo boy. Moments later, the Walkers' other 3 children ran out of the house, and they were all shot and killed. So this entire family, other than one remaining child, the oldest son, he stayed inside the cabin and just burned to death. Because, it was either that or get shot. And I don't know. I guess maybe getting shot hurts more than burning to death. I don't know about that, but oh boy, not a good look, whiteys. Let's not show up at a black person's house, set it on fire, and then gun them down as they run outside. That's bad, right? It's a very bad look. Following these murders, Walker's white neighbor took over the property and sold it to another white man. And then over the next 2 years, the night riders committed additional heinous and destructive crimes in the area as part of the Black Patch Tobacco Wars, in which the night riders fought against the American Tobacco Company and the Planters Protective Association over control of tobacco products. So these night riders, they hate everybody. So Okay, maybe it's not as racist, but it's still not great. The Night Riders like destroyed crops, machinery, livestock, and warehouses, and even raided the towns of Princeton, Hopkinsville, and Russellville, Kentucky, and took control of the county governments. Kentucky Governor Augustus E. Wilson denounced the Night Riders and offered a $500 reward for the arrest of any Night Rider, as well as a governor's pardon for anyone who just went out and killed one. So, like, that's how you know. That's how you know these dudes are pretty bad, where the governor's just like, hey, go ahead and kill him. Like, put it in, like, I'll pardon you. All right. Like, sure, you might have to go through court. You'll probably get accused and found guilty of murder, sentenced to life, maybe even death. It's fine. I'll give you a pardon. You ain't even going to have to worry. How crazy would that be right now? Like, if the governor of California was just like, you know what? I'm sick of the Proud Boys. I'm sick of these skinheads, these neo-Nazis going around. Listen, all you gangsters down in Compton, or maybe just anyone else who feels emboldened, you want to just go out and kill those guys? Go ahead. I will pardon you, and you ain't going to have to worry about it. Like, how nuts would that be if that was the country that we lived in now, with all of the guns that we have? Granted, like, everyone back then also probably had guns. I would say that a higher percentage of the population back then had guns than do now. I don't have hard data to back that up. I'm just looking anecdotally at that. But like, anyway, Tennessee governor, in response, Tennessee Governor Malcolm Rice Patterson also went after the Night Riders, especially after they kidnapped and murdered 2 white attorneys who were kind of working for this tobacco company and you know, obviously in doing things that would negatively affect the Night Riders. Patterson called in the state's militia and ultimately arrested 300 suspects. 6 of those were eventually convicted and given the death sentence, and the state of Tennessee later acquired Reelfoot Lake and established a state park. So, again, just a gang of dudes, not even like the KKK. We're the Night Riders. We're going around intimidating people because we don't like it when people have their way. We got to have our way all the time because we like fishing and farming. Okay, whatever. Moving on. Another shorter story here. In December of 1919, a black World War I veteran named Powell Green decided to go down to the local movie house in Franklinton, North Carolina, and watch whatever sort of weird black and white moving picture was showing there at the time. Being a war veteran and also living in a completely different era, Powell just kind of did what he wanted and lit up a cigarette during the movie. Well, R.M. Brown, who was white and also in the movie theater, reacted in the manner that most white people do when someone does something annoying in a movie theater. Now, right now, here's the thing. I'm on the white guy side, all right? I don't even go to movie theaters anymore, but when I did, few things were more annoying than like people talking the whole time or having their cell phone out or, you know, making a ton of noise with their snacks, just being disruptive. Like, you're sharing a space. Act like a decent person, all right? This isn't your living room, all right? You're out in public, all right? Have some common decency. So, like, I get the irritation and the anger. I don't particularly agree with the response. He gets all snippy with Powell. Powell's not having any of it, and Powell gets up from his seat and kills R.M. Brown in the movie theater, who I'm sure simply just asked Powell to politely put out his cigarettes and surely did not call him a bunch of derogatory names or act like a general piece of human trash towards him. Surely not. Not in 1919. Not in rural North Carolina. No, not a white guy. No, this is all Blackie's fault. Black guy acting out of turn here, murdering this white fella. Well, guess what? The police came and arrested Powell, but before they could even take him to jail, word had already gotten out that a black man had killed a white man, and an angry mob pulled Powell from police custody, tied him to the back of a car, and dragged him for 2 miles before they pulled over and hanged him from a tree. It's just interesting how 100 years have gone by and very little has changed. Like, white people will still get crazy angry when a black person kills a white person. Black people can kill each other all day long. Chicago. No one cares. No one really cares. But God forbid it's two people with different skin colors and people lose their minds. Can we not? Can we not do that? Like, it has, like, the skin color has nothing to do with anything. And yet, because we are such a simplistic society, and that is admittedly a very obvious difference to notice, we then just assume that difference is the primary reason for whatever happened. And it's not. It doesn't need to be. All right? Like, here's the thing, all right? You can find black people annoying, all right? You can find it annoying that they're always on the phone with somebody everywhere at all times, all right? You can find it annoying that they just cut people off in traffic. You can find it annoying that they blast their music with their subwoofers at volumes so ridiculously high that it vibrates your entire car, even though you're 3 cars ahead of them, right? You can find it annoying that you get it, right? But like, none of that has anything to do with the color of their skin, right? It has to do with, cultural, and just kind of preferences and how they were raised and their outlook on things and mindset on things. But also, white people do a lot of that same stuff, all right? White people are bad drivers too. Don't even get me started on the Asians, all right? So, like, the color of your skin has nothing to do with how bad of a driver you are, all right? It's coincidental that maybe there's higher percentages of terrible drivers who are not white, but okay, that's just, maybe it's the same amount of skin color people, but because Asians or black people are in a minority, that percentage just feels a lot higher because there's technically fewer of them, and it has nothing to do with the color of their skin. But again, like I said, it just, because it is the easiest distinction to make between two people, that's what lazy, non-critical thinking whites do, is they just like, oh, it's because they're black. Black people suck. And no, that's not how it should be. It's so wrong and lazy. Anyway, our final story, then I'll stop berating you for doing nothing. On the night of October 18th, 1934, Lola Kennedy walked out of her house in Marianna, Florida, it's kind of in the northern part around Tallahassee, to retrieve water to give to the family's hogs. Unfortunately, she never came home. Instead, her body was found stuffed under 2 old logs in a pine tree branch the next morning. Police determined that she had been raped and bludgeoned to death with a hammer. And shortly after the investigation began, Sheriff Flake Chambliss, what a name, he had 2 suspects, Calvin Cross, who was a white guy, and Claude Neal, who was a black guy. Now, obviously, based on this episode and because, this is North Florida, which is basically just the southern South, they picked Claude as the murderer. In the sheriff's defense, all right, bloody clothes and fabric were found in Neal's home. Neal also had cuts on his hands that he couldn't really explain. And a watch ring was also discovered at the crime scene that matched a ring that Neal just so happened to be missing at that time. What evidence did they have for this other white guy? I don't know. They didn't really specify that, and it doesn't really matter. Despite any concrete and provable evidence that Neal had actually committed the crime, even though he definitely probably did, angry white people gathered for their favorite angry white people activity, an angry mob. And they began searching all around Marianna for Neal. The sheriff, rightly fearing for Neal's safety because he wanted him to go through the court process, be found guilty and all of that, He moved Neal from Mariana over to Panama City, and then to Fort Walton Beach, and then Pensacola, and then Brewton, Alabama. So he's trying to get him farther and farther and farther away from Mariana because the mob is growing and they're getting angrier and they're not finding him. 4 days after the murder, Neal finally confessed to the killing. Now, was he tortured into a confession? Or did he actually do it? He probably did it. But was he tortured? Probably also that too. I don't know. Going off of past patterns and how other black people were treated, it might be both. It's fine. It could be both. All right. Here's the thing. I'm not trying to say that black people are innocent in all this. All right. Black people did some bad stuff too. All right. I'm not saying that they should have gotten away with murder. I am saying that maybe white people overreacted just a little bit. And that wasn't necessary to do all that. That's my point, guys. I'm not trying to say black people have never done anything wrong. We all know that's not true, O.J. Simpson. But I am saying that white people have been a tad bit heavy-handed over the years when it comes to their treatment of said black people. After learning that Claude Neal had confessed, the angry mob arrived in Brewton, Alabama 4 days later to retrieve their prisoner. So 8 days now have passed since this murder, and they've gotten to Brewton, Alabama. They found him, and now they're trying to get him out. And so as one part of the mob distracted the sheriff, others entered the jail and searched each cell until they found and captured Neal. Now the mob, acting on what they believed was the morally correct thing to do, took Neal 130 miles back to Mariana and announced to the media that they planned to hang him later that night on the Kennedy's farm, family land. So, like, the white people, like, this is fully justified. This is what God would have wanted. This black devil killing our white women. And we're going to take him back to the land where he committed this heinous crime, and we're going to hang him there at 7 p.m. sharp. We're going to charge $5 a head to view it. I don't know if they actually did that or not, but like, could have, and I bet it would have made some serious bank. Because look, here's the thing, man. I'm not a fan of gratuitous violence, like just violence for violence sake. But also, I really think if we went to pay-per-view executions, I think that would solve a lot of problems in this country. All right. Because, like, on one hand, I think it would be a deterrent for people getting the death penalty because people would then see what happens and like, man, maybe this life of crime is not for me. On the other hand, you want to pay to see an execution? People used to just make a day of it back in the day to go down to the town square and see the hangings. Like, it's not that barbaric. You know, it's not that dystopian because that used to be how life was. So now let's get Netflix to stream some executions. Netflix won't do it. HBO Max will, for sure. HBO Max, pay-per-view executions. Let's start running some dudes through the electric chair again. And listen, we can get the sports books involved. All right. Have an over-under on how long it'll take to kill him. Okay. Let's lay down some bets on this thing. All right. You can, like, eat into our national deficit, all right? Because it's got to be federally run, all right? Or have the states run it, whatever. Let the states run it. And the states can take all of that, all of the proceeds from the pay-per-view execution, put it into their budget, invest back in infrastructure and schools. Oh, God. If I'm ever president, that's my platform. I'm not going to run for president. I hate politics so much. Anyway, so the leaders of this mob, after announcing, let's get back into the story. I want to be done with this episode. The leaders of the mob had promised George Kennedy, Lola's father, that he would actually be the one allowed to kill Claude Neal. However, as is the rule of angry white mobs, the longer they waited for this to happen, the more agitated and unruly they became. Eventually, the group leading the riot determined that the mob was getting out of control, even for white people standards. So they took Neal to the banks of the Chattahoochee River for a very peaceful and respectful lynching. And by peaceful and respectful, I mean they did things so heinous to this man, like that it makes Jesus's crucifixion seem like a very tame, like lethal injection. All right. Like the mob started. This is how they started, by castrating Neal and then stuffing his severed penis into his mouth. All right. And forced him to eat it, like moving his jaws up and down to chew on it. All right. When that was done, they began stabbing him with whatever they could stab him with, burning him with hot irons, and then cutting off each one of his fingers and toes. At that point, because he's probably almost dead at that point just from blood loss, they hanged him. And honestly, it was probably even unnecessary by them. But when you've been announcing that, all right, we're going to hang him, you got to hang him, right? Otherwise, the angry mob is just going to become even angrier because they wanted to see someone get hanged and didn't do it. So now they got to find someone to hang, right? Anyway, the crowd, after Neal was dead, they brought the body back to Kennedy's property at 1 a.m. George, who had been promised first dibs, was outraged, not at the horrific state of Neal's body and everything they had done to him, but because he didn't actually get to kill Claude Neal himself like he was promised. So, not to leave empty-handed, Kennedy still shot Neal's corpse 3 times in the head. The crowd then proceeded to kick, stab, and run over the body with their cars because overkill had clearly not yet made it to the lexicon of Floridian English. The mob then marched through the area and burned several buildings owned by other black people because they clearly had everything to do with this. And then they dragged Neal's body to the courthouse where it was rehung 2 hours later, or at least what was left of it. 3 hours after they after they hanged him again, Sheriff Chambliss found the body and buried it. By noon, 2,000 more people had arrived at the courthouse in Mariana to try to see Claude Neal's body. But when the crowd learned that they were too late to join in on this murder, another angry mob formed and began rioting through the streets of Mariana. Over 200 more black people were injured in the riots, and it got so bad that the National Guard had to be called in to disperse the crowds. If there is a silver lining to this story, because God, there needs to be one. The lynching of Claude Neal generally horrified the rest of the nation, as it should. And the event finally kind of kicked off a discussion that maybe lynching black people was not the most ethical, humane, or moral thing to do. In the future, I will have more episodes. There were some other race riots that happened in Florida around this time that also kind of furthered the kind of way that white people may have overreacted to black people.
All done.
All right, the Great White Guilt episode in the books. You made it, and go hug a black person today and just say, I'm sorry. Although that kind of, that also might be seen as racist. I don't know, man. I don't know how to navigate these sorts of things because it's like, it's not racist, but if you do something because someone is a different skin color, people say it's racist, even though it's not, because race is all about intent. And that's, at least in my mind, going and hugging a black person is good intentions. It's not race. I don't know, man. It's just so, can we just not acknowledge skin color anymore? I think that would be the fix to all of this, but we can't do that. It's too hard for people. It is too hard for all of these simple-minded mouth breathers out there. And I'm sure I have said a lot of things that are just not politically correct. And I'm sorry. I don't understand it. And I don't know that a lot of people actually do. And that is that. So, not gonna have a what did we learn segment, because I think all we've learned from this episode is that white people are pretty bad sometimes, a lot of the times. All right. But we're on top, baby. Yeah. USA. Anyway, instead, I would like to preview season 6 because we got to move on and figure out a new time. Season 6. I'm really excited about the next year of episodes. A couple of things, like we're going to have episodes on Mormons again. Going to have an episode on Jesus Christ on Easter week. An episode about Jesus Christ. All right, I'm going to talk to you guys. I finally, I'm done. I'm done kind of bashing religion. I've made some offhand comments here and there about my feelings towards religion and the church. And I would like to talk to you about our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, on Easter week. And so we're gonna go through some stories from biblical era texts that a lot of people believe is really true. They're not in the Bible. They're not in the God-breathed King James Version, but they're in some other books of the Bible, of other versions of the Bible. So we'll go through those. You'll learn some stories about Jesus that you never heard before. We also have episode 300 coming up in the next year. Got to go big on that. I don't know. It's going to be hard to top how absolutely zooted I was in episode 200, but we'll figure something out. We will figure it out. All right. And then my favorite thing is we're going to be doing something in the summer that I would like to call
Summer of Cults.
Oh God, it's going to be so fun. 10 weeks of nothing but cults from history. We're going to have a special theme song for it. It's going to be great. I'm so excited because these are 10. I mean, look, all cults are completely insane and these stories are not going to disappoint. So yeah, get ready for the
Summer of Cults.
And that'll be starting in June, I think, and go all the way through July and August, and that will lead us into Serial Killer September and our spooky themed episodes in October. So yeah, ton of stuff, and can't wait for that. So thank you for continuing to listen, whether you've just come on board or you've been here all 5 years. Thank you so much. Keep telling your friends about the show, or maybe not this one, and tell them about next week. All right, tell them come back next week. We'll have. What are we doing next week? I didn't even preview next week. We are starting season 6 with a trio of insane stories. We're looking at the lives of Benny Evangelista, Anatoly Slivko, and Jacques Mesrine, serial killers, just dudes who were absolutely terrible. There's like occultism involved, just all kinds of crazy stuff. So starting off season 6 on a high note, definitely higher than today's note. And so that's it for sure this time. Thank you for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends and keep it weird.
This is a podcast